Good evening, welcome. I'm John. I'm the event director at Literati Bookstore. We're so pleased to welcome Stephen Mack Jones to our At Home with Literati virtual series in support of Dead of Winter and in conversation this evening with James R. Benn. Just a quick webinar overview for our attendees who are joining us. You may not have heard me yet. The chat is closed to you this evening, but you can keep the chat window open as I will be dropping links to purchase Dead of Winter from Literati throughout the event in the chat. You can use the Q&A feature that's on your toolbar to submit questions at any time, and I will ask a selection of those questions at the conclusion of the conversation on your behalf. As well, live transcription is available on your toolbar as well, should you need it. And of course, if you're watching us later on YouTube, you can always find links to purchase books and find out more about our upcoming events in the description directly below. And you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel to keep up with our events, even if you cannot catch them live. It's youtube.com/c/Literati Bookstore. A reminder, you can shop for more books at literatibookstore.com that have shipped to your home anywhere in the United States. And if you live in Southeast Michigan, our doors are open to the public for in-store shopping. Most of all, though, we'd just like to thank you for your attendance this evening, or this morning, or this afternoon, depending on where and when in the world you may be joining us from. So without further ado, I'll introduce tonight's author and our moderator. Stephen Mack Jones is a published poet and award-winning playwright and recipient of the prestigious Hammett Prize, Nero Award, and the Kresge Arts in Detroit Literary Fellowship. He was born in Lansing, Michigan, and currently lives in the suburbs of Detroit. Dead of Winter is his third novel. And James R. Benn is the author of the Billy Boyle World War II Mysteries. The debut, Billy Boyle, was selected as a top 5 book of the year by BookSense and was a Dilys Award nominee. A Blind Goddess was longlisted for the Impact Dublin Literary Award. The Rest is Silence was a Barry Award nominee, and The Devouring was a Macavity Award nominee. Benn, a former librarian, splits his time between the Gulf Coast of Florida and Connecticut with his wife, Deborah Mandel. Please join me in welcoming James R. Benn and Stephen Mack Jones into your living rooms.
Thank you very much, John. Hello, Stephen.
Oh,
Hello,
John.
everybody. Hello.
James, good to see you.
Now, Stephen, thank you very much for asking me to do this, and John for giving me the opportunity to quiz Steve and see how he does today. Now, Steve, John just read some really impressive stuff about your awards and all that. I also looked up on Amazon, and The Dead of Winter, the book we're talking about, number 3 in your series, is a New York Times Book Review Editor's Choice, a book list top 10 crime novel of 2020, and an Amazon editor's pick. So how do you do all that? How do you make that happen? Just what's the secret? Share it with us, will you? 10 words or less.
It's the same secret sauce you use. It's talking with friends in your head and hard work. In fact, I would probably admit that you work harder than me. But yeah.
Okay.
It's putting your butt in a chair and writing for an hour, 2 hours, 3, and pushing through even when you don't have an idea of where you're going. I know that's more than 10 words, but
it's sadly the truth. There's no secret. It's hard work, diligence, patience. Well, it's all very impressive, and
thanks.
So. You're welcome. Now, August Snow is a great character. Do you want to tell folks a little bit about him in case there's one person here who hasn't heard of him?
Sure. But before I do that, I'd like to say that I in my Twitter posts about tonight and Facebook posts about tonight, I may have overpromised as far as special effects. So we'll get that out of the way. Whoa. Okay. That's good. Scotty, I need more power. What was the question?
Who's August Snow? introduce us to August Snow. I've never met the guy, say, and he walks into a room. What do you tell me about him?
Okay, August Snow is he is half Black, half Mexican American, or Blaxican. He is his mother was Mexican American, his father African American. He was born and raised in the southwest portion of Detroit, which has long been known as Mexican Town. He is a veteran of Afghanistan, a Marine sharpshooter, sniper, and he was also a part of the Detroit Police Department, one of the youngest detective lieutenants ever. Unfortunately, he got involved in some rather unsavory political happenings in Detroit under a previous mayor. He was fired for his investigation into the mayor's office, and he won $12 million in a wrongful dismissal suit against the city. And that's a lot of money, but August was never raised to think about the importance and value and endless need for money. So as a result of that, he moved back to his family home in Mexican Town. Both his mother and father are deceased, but they still guide him. They are still voices in his heart and head that keep him on mostly a true north path. And whenever there seems to be trouble, whether within the neighborhood or people that he knows, August is the first to ask why, and to run into the burning building, because that's his nature. That is the way his parents raised him. So it leads to some harrowing situations.
Now,
And
I was going to say the first book was a murder in a very upscale neighborhood in Detroit. And we met some characters who return in the subsequent books there.
right.
The second book had to do with human trafficking for the most part.
Yes.
And this book is about crooked real estate people elbowing their way into Mexican Town. How did you come to that plot for Dead of Winter? What was it that interested you in taking a look at what was going on with real estate?
That's a great question, Jim. Detroit, as people nationally and internationally know, went through an extraordinary hard period of time when the city was bankrupt. And not too many other cities in the United States were laughing or saying, oh, it's just another thing that happens in Detroit. Most major metropolitan cities, New York, Chicago, Miami, Los Angeles, they were looking at our situation very seriously because those very same cities were holding some of the same municipal bonds that went to a penny on the dollar in Detroit. So these other cities were looking at Detroit to see how we as a city excised ourselves from that bankruptcy. And what has happened is it actually spurred an actual true renaissance of Detroit. New apartment buildings going up, new restaurants, renovation of parks. It was extraordinary. And land that once went for pennies on the dollar was now very desirable, very wanted by corporate entities, by large real estate developers. And most of that was good. But I saw that sometimes gentrification can come with a bloody cost. And that is essentially what Dead of Winter is all about. At what cost will someone acquire land? At what cost will someone move people out of the way? And will it involve murder?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. What is it about August Snow that causes people to come to him with problems like this? What's one of the attributes that you imbued him with that make him the focus of trouble or solving problems?
Wow, that I think part of it is people find him very trustworthy, very honest. Over the course of 3 books, he has gained something of a reputation. Some people may see him as chupacabra. Other people may see him as a saving angel. And he's a bit of both.
Yeah. I had the thought the other day that in an age where, August Snow is not a billionaire, but in the age of billionaires launching themselves into space, instead of building libraries like the old guard billionaires used to do, it's refreshing to see a guy who has a lot of money. $12 million is a lot of money, and he uses it for the betterment of his community. And that's what makes him appealing to me, is that he's got that innate sense of doing the right thing, even when he could just fly off to the Caribbean.
Right. But again, that's the voice, that's the guidance, the raising that he received through his Mexican-American mother and African-American father, who, by the way, was a cop himself, Detroit cop. And his mother was a well-respected artist, a painter. So he got nearly all of his moral, ethical training through his mother and father, the kind of home that they built. Of course, his discipline was sharpened as a Marine, and his will and wish to serve the community came from his father as a Detroit cop. To put himself in front of the bullet, so that a neighbor could live. To value the lives of those around him. and the key being whether he likes them or not,
Yeah.
to value their lives, and to understand their motivations. So I think,
Pretty appealing guy.
well, I certainly hope so. Um,
Now, Stephen, I've already read Dead of Winter, and I encourage everybody else to. And without giving anything away, I know he takes a little break at the end. So I've been really interested in hearing what's going to happen next, because this, I don't know. So what's next for August Snow? What can you tell us about the next
well,
book?
he went through a lot
Mhm.
in Dead of Winter, and that's partially because, as well, with Billy Boyle, if you keep writing the same thing, then you not only lose your own interest, but you lose the reader's interest. And so you have to up the stakes. You have to zig where you might have zagged. And because of all that happens in Dead of Winter, August decides to, and I won't reveal too much, but August decides it's time for him to take a breath. There are only so many times when a character can go down the rabbit hole and not be changed, not be affected. You certainly did that with the Red Horse, which is magnificent.
Thank you. I've often looked at it this way, that there's really two kinds of protagonists in crime fiction and probably all of literature. One is the protagonist who charges through the world, charges through the plot, comes out the other end, and the world has changed, but the character is not. And the other kind is he charges through the plot, charges through the story, and comes out the other end changed by the experience. Yes. And I think you and I are both more in that camp than the former camp. And there's plenty of good examples of the former camp, but it's not what interests me very much.
Well, and honestly, I think people want to see that. They want to see their own emotions, their own emotional life reflected to some degree. I'm not writing about, Tony Stark and Iron Man. I'm not talking about Superman or Aquaman, who, of course, these characters go through their own trials and tribulations, but they're at a level that is sometimes emotionally, intellectually unattainable for other people. And I want readers to feel the lives that August is affecting, that he's interacting with. I want them to smell the food that he cooks, and he cooks some great food.
He likes his food.
That he does. That he does. And
the research must be hell for you.
Yeah, boy, it's so difficult eating so much Mexican food and African American food. I'm writing about him enjoying some sushi today. So
And all I got are K rations. So
right. Yep, you and those MREs.
Yeah. So we're going to see August again. Got any hint of what's going to be going on?
Yes, I'm working on a fourth book, and I'm the consummate Midwesterner. I don't really like to talk about what I'm doing until it's done.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say that August is back for a fourth time. And this time it's personal.
All right. I won't ask any other questions.
No, to be honest with you, the subject is to me surprising. And it is one that I am at this point treading lightly with. Because
now I'm really interested.
Yeah. Just to give you an idea, the tentative title is Deus Ex.
Which is a video game, as far as I know. But what do I know?
You know as well as I do, we haven't played video games since long. Come on, man.
Okay, Deus Ex. All right.
Deus Ex. Yes.
So we were chatting a little bit online about Westerns. You have an interest in Westerns.
Right.
I'm fascinated that we don't have Westerns very much in crime fiction. I mean, there's a few writers that are doing it, but it's the great American story. I mean, nobody else has that. So why is that? Why don't we see Westerns in general literature? And why don't we see more of them in crime fiction married to that genre?
Well, this is just speculation on my part, Jim, but Westerns fell out of favor in the 60s, early 70s, as far as TV, perhaps some in books. And I think people have the idea that Westerns, all the stories that could be told about the Old West have been told, and nothing could be further from the truth.
Because the real story has hardly been told at all.
Exactly. Some of the best Westerns that I have read and seen have, they came from a little guy who lived maybe 10, 15 miles away from me. And his name was Elmore Leonard.
Oh, right, yeah.
The gentleman that gave you Hombre, the gentleman that gave you, what was it? 310 to Yuma?
Yeah. 410 or 310?
You might be right.
No.
But Elmore Leonard, who eventually kept Hollywood working right up to and through his death, with Get Shorty, et cetera, and so forth. Some of the classics. There's another gentleman that has written some fantastic Westerns, Lauren D. Estelman, another Michigan writer.
Oh, really?
Yes. And most folks might know Lauren for his Amos Walker Detroit mystery books. But he's an incredible writer of Westerns. And as far as Westerns and African-American culture, the story has barely been touched.
Wow.
We are only now talking about what my father was telling me about as a kid, Bass Reeves, who was the first Black U.S. Marshal.
Wow.
And the fact that, and this, when my father told me this, it was like, oh, okay, Dad's a little, But Bass Reeves, his adventures were the basis for the Lone Ranger.
Get out of town.
That's true.
Wow. So you got an idea roaming around up in that?
I do have an idea. I do have an idea of a story that I'd like to tell. It's that story is third in line. Right now it's the next August snow book, and a cop thriller based in Detroit that's kind of a cross between The Bad Lieutenant and Laurel and Hardy. Yeah.
So this is a standalone, right? Or is it?
Standalone.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. Bro, get to work. What are you doing goofing around tonight? You got a lot of work to do. Hey, I got another question for you. We were based on our online banter earlier. The movie Heat. So you got De Niro, the professional thief, Al Pacino, the cop after him. They have that famous sit down cup of coffee.
Yes.
So which guy do you identify with?
Oh God, don't put me in
You gotta pick one.
Oh man. I think I would be more on Pacino's side. Both of them have a stand-up moral and ethical system. De Niro's is a little twisted without, going into detail, but I like Pacino because this is Pacino looking at a mirror image of himself, and the challenge that presents. So yeah, I got to go that way. And thank God none of us wanted to be Val Kilmer.
Right.
Wow.
Oh, there was somebody who volunteered for that when we were talking about that.
He was fantastic.
Yeah, yes. Makes me want to go back and rewatch it.
It really does.
Here's another question. Tell me something that scares you, something that frightens you, and how has it found its way into any of your books?
That is a fascinating question that I feel myself shying away from. There is a sense in August that he will get close to you but not too close. I think there is a fear of, not necessarily a fear of intimacy, but the more I hold on to myself, the less I have to lose. And I think to a great degree, August and I share that. Okay, smart guy. Here's a question for you. Boxers or briefs? Huh? Answer the question, Ben.
I shy away from that one. Okay, so here's an easy one.
All right.
Tell me something you've read in the past year that you might reread again, or are there any books that you do reread?
I do reread books. That again is a tough question. It's somewhere between The Maltese Falcon, which is a real touchstone for me. A Catskill Eagle.
Oh yeah,
by Robert Parker.
Yeah, one of the best, early book, one of the best.
Exactly. And Kurt Vonnegut's Galapagos.
Wow, I've never read that.
Oh, please do.
Yeah.
Loved Kurt Vonnegut. Loved his skewed view of the world, and he wrote in the simplest of language, the simplest of sentences, but managed to express the most profound thoughts and feelings. So those are three books that I might go back to from time to time.
I'm about due to reread Josephine Tey, The Daughter of Time, and it's the book where well, I've read it so many times. I think it's great. Her detective is in bed with some kind of leg injury, can't move, and he spends the whole book solving the mystery of the murder of the princes back from the old days in the Tower of London. And it's just, the way she does it is just fascinating, bringing in history, but also the mental process of deducing from the evidence, that's scant evidence that's made available. So anyway, that's big on my list.
Yes.
Do you read any of the old guard, Agatha Christie, Dorothy L. Sayers, Conan Doyle, all those folks?
Those have never been taken off the list. And I think anybody who's tuning in, listening to us, would have to agree. You don't have to agree,
but you ought to.
But you ought to. In the wintertime, if you've got a cold or the flu or whatever, and you just need a hot cup of tea and an Afghan around your shoulders, there's nothing better than Agatha Christie to provide comfort and armchair comfort and intrigue. So, yeah, or any of the Sherlock Holmes adventures. So yeah, there's still quite a lot to learn from and enjoy from those writers.
There's so many people writing Sherlock Holmes stories now because he's in the public domain, but there's just something, to me, there's just something missing. People try to come up with their own take on it and go in a little different direction. It's just not the same. Yeah. It's hard to
Yeah,
replicate.
I've been reluctant with the new wave of Sherlock Holmes stories. Um, but again, I was reluctant to read any of the Spencer books after Robert B. Parker died. I was reluctant to read Ace Atkins' take on the character, and I was reluctant to read the other takes on Parker characters. The fact of the matter is, my reluctance was based in the fact that I just loved what came from Parker's mind. The action, the adventure, the humanity, the compassion.
And the conciseness.
Yes, yes. That being said, I have read Ace Atkins' take on Spencer, and he does a very fine job. And Mike Lupica does an excellent job with Sonny Randall. And Jesse Stone. They both do wonderful jobs, and I talked about my reluctance to read these books with one of the authors, and his answer to me was essentially, I didn't go pursuing this. The answer was essentially, Parker's family missed his voice, missed his stories. And that just really touched me. So I was duty bound. I felt duty bound to, give it a second try. And these gentlemen do a tremendous job. They do a tremendous job. And it's something so simple, so intimate as family missing your voice. That's
So we talked, maybe it was during 2020 or earlier this year, about writing during the pandemic. And I think that was at the time we thought, well, it's almost over, So let's revisit that. What's it like for you now? How is all this Delta Doom impacting your productivity and your getting the word out about August Snow?
Right. Well, first of all, to the writers that had books released during the pandemic, which includes yourself, sir, I hurt for you. It had to be a hard time not to go out and meet your readers and talk to them and genuinely connect with them one-on-one or in a personal group setting. For me, the pandemic was both good for me. I know that sounds strange, but it was good for me because I'm not a very social person. I can be. And once I'm in that situation, I often enjoy it. But out of cynicism, I started calling the 2020 lockdown, I started calling it artist in residence, just to make
Put a happy
myself
face
feel-
on it. Huh?
Right. There was, like a lot of people, it was something devastatingly new, and there was this sense of ennui that I couldn't shake for a while. It was difficult for me to write. Coming out of 2020, at the bare end of 2020, that's when I got back on track.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And realized, Steve, this is what you do. Mm-hmm. You're a storyteller. Tell me a story.
Yeah. What else can you do?
Exactly. So that's.
Well, I'll just ask you to keep your fingers crossed for me. I have my next book coming out.
Road
of
Bones.
There we go. On September 7th, and we have a live in-person book launch event. So
really,
we'll see. Yeah, Bank Square Books in Mystic, Connecticut is going to host it, and who knows, maybe it'll actually happen.
Excellent. And for the folks that are listening in and watching this, whether it's now or later, if you miss reading really tightly constructed, beautifully written, the term is hokey, but it's nevertheless true, pulse-pounding mysteries, James Benn is your man, and Billy Boyle is your character. In fact, just as far as Road of Bones, I'm going to give the folks a little teaser.
Oh.
Night Witches.
Night Witches. Folks, if you don't know about Night Witches, this is the book for you.
You got to go with that.
Yeah. So it may be time, thank you very much for that. And it may be time to see if John has any questions for us. If there are any listeners out there in Radio Land who want to ask Stephen a question.
We do not have any questions so far. Folks are perhaps a bit shy, but please don't be shy. Feel free to submit any questions you have for Stephen or Stephen and James to the Q&A feature. It's available on your toolbar. But as there are no questions now, James, I'm happy to turn it back over to you if you have any questions that you have on the cutting room floor or anything else that you and Stephen might like to discuss.
I was going to ask Stephen his favorite color, but then give me your answer. It was a great answer you gave me, not the magenta one.
Well, my favorite color is magenta. It's a beautiful color. I know it's not in your usual box of 8 crayons, but it's a beautiful color. And I do happen to like US mint green.
There's the real answer. There we go. So the other question I have is about the standalone book you're writing.
Yes.
And what's different approaching that book than in writing An August Snow? Are you doing anything different with which tense it's written in or point of view? How are you navigating that?
Point of view will be the same. It will be first person. But what is new is going from Mexican Town in Detroit to Corktown.
And what's that?
Corktown is one of the oldest Irish settlements
Oh, yeah.
in the country.
Yeah.
Um,
You know,
they Mexican town and Corktown virtually rubbed shoulders. So yeah.
okay.
Um,
I just remembering that in the book I'm finishing up for next year, Corktown is mentioned because there's a character who lives in Corktown. It's just mentioned briefly, but I knew that sounded familiar. So when I go change to a standalone, because Billy Boyle is written first person point of view, I find it very freeing to go to the third person, because it's like I can go anywhere, I can do anything. I'm not constrained by this one character. So it's a lot of fun to do that on occasion.
Yeah, well, as far as first person, I find it very intimate for the reader. And it's an intimacy that can be liberating. It can be terrifying. It's that whisper in your ear or shout in your face. It's right there. But you're right. Third person does allow for that. Now, next we're going to be talking about, the best kind of commas, which I
won't go there. But I will say that you're right about first person, because it is very intimate for that character, but less so for all the other characters, because there's no way to get into their heads. And that's the push-pull between first person, third person. Third person, you can delve into several characters as deeply as you want. And in first person, you have to find a way to elucidate what it is that's affecting them at a deep level.
Right.
And that can be tricky. So John's back.
Hey, John.
We do have a question. It was actually a question that I had for both of you as well. So this attendee, great minds think alike. SC writes in, tell us about your research process. Also, is there any update on the adaptation of the August Snow books and the Billy Boyle books? I'd say let's expand that to how about both of you tell us about your research process? You're both researching different periods and lives and geographies.
All right. Frankly, I think James is the expert on research. My research really happens after my first draft is written. I really need to get the story out, regardless of how rough it is. I may do some intermittent research along that first draft path. But, and then I will set my first draft aside and then go deeply into research on the subject that I've covered and some details. And there are times with that methodology that I find that I've actually cheated the story of something that is extraordinary and real. And it excites me to discover that, so I can go back in and give that section more life. But I guess some folks out there would call that reverse engineering. Jim?
Well, I really subscribe to Ernest Hemingway's version of research, and he talks about his iceberg theory. And that he says the beauty and majesty of an iceberg moving through water is that 9/10 of it is hidden. So I have to do a lot of research on the area I'm writing. It's set in World War II Europe, so I need to know about the locale. I need to know about the historical importance, the people who are involved. And then as I'm writing, a lot of that just falls away because that total immersion just gives me a sense of what it may have been like to be in that situation. So I don't need to write about all that, but I need to write with a confidence that I know it all. And I often, at some point in each book, I feel like if you drop me on a street in London in 1944, I could find my way around all right. I know what was going on. But it really is, for me, a total immersion. And it might be that I'm reading a book about food in southern France or the wildflowers in southern France, just to know what it felt like to be in southern France at that time. But none of that will end up being used in the book. That's the trick with research, is to know when to let it just drop away.
There's an adage that someone once told me. I don't know where it came from, but the adage was, for every gallon of research you do, use a teaspoon.
Yeah. But you have to do the research, otherwise you won't know which teaspoon to really murder your analogy here.
Exactly.
So and then the follow-up question here was just an update on the adaptation of the August Snow books and the Billy Boyle books.
Okay. Well, I'm happy to say, and I don't want to sound like I'm bragging or anything, but I have been named consulting producer for the television show, and it's my understanding. Let's see. My understanding that those responsibilities include, getting everybody's Starbucks order,
and getting it right.
And getting it right. And I have to provide my own chair. The update is that it's still in development, and it's being developed by CBS and ABC, which I had never heard of, but that's wonderful. Also Imagine Studios, which is Ron Howard. Gaspin Studios, which has several shows on television, broadcast television now. Keegan Michael Key is also an executive producer. And also a gentleman by the name of Paul Eckstein. And I cannot tell you how fascinating he is and how much trust I have in his ability to bring that character to life. Paul Eckstein was a writer on Law and Order: Criminal Intent. Oh. If you go to Netflix, you'll see that he wrote the first season of a show called Narcos. And he has a show on Epix now, the streaming service, called The Godfather of Harlem with Forrest Whitaker.
Yeah.
So he is an extraordinary writer, and all the executive producers, of course, Keegan-Michael Key is just a phenomenal talent. We've barely scratched the surface of his the depth of his talent, but I feel fortunate for those people who are involved. I can't tell you when it will go on, whether as a streaming series or a broadcast series. You know, I don't know. Here I am in the lovely Midwest, and I'm not in Hollywood. But I do have the greatest confidence in that team of people.
Oh, good luck. That sounds fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, for the past year, we've been working with a producer who's been putting a package together and approaching actors and directors and trying to sell a package for Billy Boyle. And as of this point, I'm reminded of a quote from Pauline Kael, who said, "In Hollywood, you could die from encouragement." So that's where we are.
Well, go ahead.
And I have to tell you, because Jim has production things going, I have production things going. That doesn't take away from our daily job. I don't think either of us are really measuring for a kidney-shaped pool. We're not pricing out Rolls Royces. There's the work and there's family.
We've reached the top of the hour. Stephen Mack Jones, James R. Benn, thank you so much for joining us at Home with Literati. Looking forward to having you both in the store and then taking you out for a whiskey afterwards when we're back to doing that.
Until then,
to all of our viewers, thank you so much for joining us as well. We look forward to seeing you at the next event. Take care, everyone. Have a great night.
Okay. Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks, everybody.
Take care.